Jimmy Carter is essentially the only American president who lived in 3 centuries. He was born in 1924, but it might as well have been in the 19th century. He had no running water, no electricity on the farm where he grew up until he was 11 years old, and they had no mechanized farm equipment, barefoot most of the year. 20th century, obviously, he was president. He was part of all of the major social movements. And as a former president, he has been on the cutting edge of conflict resolution, sustainability, disease prevention. These are the big issues of the 21st century. And so he's the longest lived president in American history. When Jimmy Carter was in the nuclear navy, the first disaster of the nuclear age happened at a reactor in Canada. And Carter was working for the legendary Admiral Hyman Rickover, the father of the nuclear navy. And Rickover sent Carter and a team on a secret mission, and they had to go to the core of a melted down reactor and fix it so that the water stopped flooding in, the highly radioactive water. Turned out that there was 1,000 times as much radiation as they expected, but they knew that Carter and his team could only go in for 90 seconds each. And Carter got out in 89 seconds. At that time, he had 3 sons. He was pretty sure that it had led to sterilization, or it could have even killed him. It was his form almost of military action. And of course, not only did it not shorten his life, but they had Amy 15 years later. When Carter decided he wanted to run for president, the Atlanta press, his hometown press, said, Jimmy Carter wants to run for president of what? And a lot of other reporters, Jimmy who? But he was the longest of long shots. And it's the closest, as somebody in the book says, that the United States has ever come to essentially picking a president out of the phone book. But he ran a brilliant campaign in 1976. It was about healing and bringing the country together. This was in the post-Watergate period. And even though Nixon had resigned and Gerald Ford was his opponent, the stink of Watergate was still there. And Carter pledged that he would never lie to the American public when he was president. He exaggerated some, and he broke some campaign promises, but he never flatly lied to the American people. Not once. Carter's priority was peace, and this came from his moral convictions and is what he truly believed in more than anything else as president. And I think one of the things that he was the most proud of is that he didn't drop any bombs or fire any missiles when he was president. And it's true that if the Iran hostage raid had gone through and they would have engaged in some combat with the militants who were holding 52 Americans captive, it very possibly could have been that there was some combat on his watch. But as it happened, there was none. He was the first president since Thomas Jefferson who did not have anybody be killed in anything but a training accident on his watch. Jimmy Carter was the greatest environmental president in American history, with the exception possibly of Theodore Roosevelt. There were 14 major pieces of environmental legislation that passed on his watch. He established green energy, but in some ways the most tragic part of it is that he created a series of reports called Global 2000, but he was really the first person to describe as sustainability. And the final report, which came out just a couple of weeks before he left office, outlined climate change and the challenge of climate change in terms that were almost exactly the same as what Paris Climate Accords, what needed to be done. I found articles that he had underlined as early as 1971, when he first understood that there was something going on in the scientific community. But it hadn't ripened as an issue. But there's no question that if he had been reelected, in 1980, the United States would have been taking action on climate change in the early 1980s.